All right, thanks for joining us this week. We have an interesting one for you. I'm here with my cousin Zach. Of course, I am Ryan, and we're going to jump right into it, guys. We're going to talk about the kiss of death, essentially, for this one woman. I think she goes by the name of Quinn, or at least that's what I saw. They call her the Boston Beauty. But from what I saw, she gets hives from kisses. She gets all these different types of sicknesses. Have you heard something about like this at all?
No, I hadn't. I watched a lot of her videos and tried to learn more about it, but she has this disease where it's not really the kisses that make her this way, but it's any remaining pieces of items that she's allergic to. So she calls them her main 6 anaphylactic allergens, and she will not let any man kiss her on a date if he's had any of those foods in the last 24 hours.
Yeah. So what I find interesting about this is it makes you wonder because, the thing is like, she's a decent looking person, right? Like she takes care of herself and stuff. And like, you would think to yourself, man, that's gotta be like one of those, do I deal with it and just, handle it? Or does she have trouble dating because of it? Like, how do you go on Tinder and be like, yeah, you could kill me. You could go to prison if you kill me.
Yeah, she said that she does have a way of bringing it up if somebody asks her out. Typically, she'll get asked out for dinner because that's what everybody does. But then she'll say, well, I do want to go out with you, but I can't go to dinner because I'm on a limited diet due to her disease, mast cell activation syndrome. And so she'll suggest an alternative. And she said that there's guys who have seen her videos, the video that we're actually talking about here, and had followed all those rules prior to taking her out on a date, so that way he could kiss her at the end of the night. So that's romantic. There's guys that'll go through that and jump through those hoops. But it's a little bit of a mood killer for her to bring that up. And, and also, like, it really limits your options, man, because she can only have 2 foods in her entire life. So that's her whole TikTok identity, is that every video starts with, I'm the girl that can only eat 2 foods. It is oats and baby formula.
That's what it is, oats. That's what I was thinking of.
Oats and baby formula, okay? And so she has ways of trying to, like, make it exciting in the same way that, like, a vegan will try to keep their food exciting. But she'll make, like, little pancakes out of the oats mixed with the formula. She'll make crepes one day, but it all tastes the same. And it looks horrific. I wouldn't even feed my baby this.
It does, yeah. It looks really bad. And the other thing, too, is hey, let's say you got some 600-pound dude, right? If he's stuck to her diet, he would be the best in shape person you'd ever see in your entire life.
Yeah, you said she looks good. How can you not? Can you imagine if you had
can't
to
eat McDonald's?
Oats and baby formula and you were still 300 pounds just because you ate a bag of oats every single day?
1,000 Gerber bottles of baby food, or something?
It's kind of a blessing in disguise, I think, because like food is a real problem. Like for me, like I go out and I eat candy all the time. I go out fast food all the time. I'm always craving sweets. I probably have diabetes and don't even know about it. And
God, why do my kidneys hurt?
Can't feel my feet.
Yeah.
But it's really hard for me to like resist those urges. But if you're just born unable to eat any of these amazing foods, then she probably doesn't even really look forward to eating. It's just simply like a biological function that she has to fulfill every so often. And so her health is probably amazing. The formula probably makes her her nutrients perfectly balanced, and she doesn't have to worry about it.
But here's my question, because I thought about this. Do you think it's kind of one of those things where eventually you forget what you're missing? So you know how like people stop drinking pop, right? And then 2 years later they have their first Coca-Cola and it's like the sweetest thing that they've ever tasted. Do you think eventually it's just one of those where she just forgets like what life, it's like a blind person. Like you kind of just forget how much it was awesome to see. Like, I don't know. Like
I think food just plays a different role in her life. Like it's not a source of enjoyment like it is for most people.
Correct.
Most people really look forward to their meals and they really they want to try something special.
Yep.
those thoughts don't even go through her mind. She's probably way more productive than the average person because she doesn't get distracted. Like I was sitting here in this office earlier, just like making my notes, and then I'm like, well, I could sit here and keep working, or I can go and grab a pretzel at Holiday, and I went and did that. Like she just doesn't have those thoughts at all, and so she probably doesn't know what she's missing. It sounds like it's a lifelong thing, so she might not even know what she's missing at all.
And I think this is more than just ingesting, right? It's also the touch, right? So like she can't touch like shellfish juice. Like if there's shrimp juice or something on the counter, she could get hives, right? On her skin, because that one of the photos showed like her whole chest was covered in hives. So that's interesting. I wonder how that does for sex though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it like does seminal fluid like cause the same reaction?
I don't know. Like some women, they make you like eat better diets because then like your fucking cum will taste better. Like if you only eat
I heard about
oranges.
the pineapple thing. Yeah.
I mean, I wonder. Yeah, maybe he has to watch his diet. Otherwise, he'll be allergic to that too.
That takes a special. That sounds like something out of a Hallmark movie. What's that movie where the girl was in a bubble? She's like dying or whatever. Like Dylan Sprouse started it or something. It's like The Stars Above Us or whatever. Dude, it's ridiculous, man. Like I feel bad for her. I do. And I hope she finds the one, and maybe there is that guy that will deal with that for the rest of his life. But imagine you're trying to feed your kid some food, and they throw spaghetti sauce on her, and now she's got to go to the hospital.
Like she melts.
The Wicked Witch of the West, bro. Can you imagine, like, kids just slapping the arms, and all of a sudden, right on the face? You killed mom.
Yeah,
what I mean?
A weakness. Like, I mean, it seems like she handles it well. She seems like a perfectly normal person.
Yeah.
But, like, what a terrible affliction to have. Like,
Horrible.
Good thing she's born now because there's no other time in history where anybody could accommodate that. Like, her entire life is just held up by pharmaceutical science. Yeah. Like, what even causes that, dude? Like, is it the vaccines?
I mean, it could be. It could be the Trump or the COVID vaccines. What I'm curious is, what does your grocery bill look like? I mean, do you walk into the store and your whole shopping cart's full of Quaker? What does it look like? Is it
man.
All oatmeal?
I watched her make it, and it literally just plain oats that you can buy.
That's it.
Like when I was trying to lose weight, I did go on like oats. I did like oats and egg white pancakes, right? And I couldn't make
terrible.
it. It was flavorless. You put a little cinnamon on there, and it was like okay, but
she can't have cinnamon.
Yeah, you can't even have cinnamon, dude. So, but she literally has like a bag of oats. She puts it into a food processor so it becomes a powder, and then she cracks open a can of this formula and pours it in there, and it just makes like a paste. And she just works with it the best as she can. And I think that the formula does have flavors. Like she said, this one's vanilla. So she can have some fun with it, you know?
You know that ain't vanilla.
She doesn't know the difference, though. She doesn't know what vanilla
Correct.
is.
That's like a blind... If someone was born blind, you could tell them that the sky is green, and they would think that that's the color green. Yeah. Like if they could see.
Exactly.
You know, so how does she know what vanilla tastes like?
I'm not sure, man.
You ever seen those kids in school run like Naruto?
Oh, yeah.
They got like their arms behind their back, and they're like...
There's always one of those kids.
Always, dude.
There's that guy... There's the horse girl, and then do you ever have anybody wear tails?
Yes. Dude, that's in now.
Yeah.
Didn't we cover that already? The furries thing? I'm pretty sure we talked about that.
We talked about some kind of furry thing. I think so. But I actually heard a story about someone that I know. So my stepdad, his niece goes to like junior high or high school. Mm. And there's a lot more kids now that are more blatant about being a furry. And so... they're wearing the tails, and like apparently some of them even wear like the suits to school and stuff, and schools have to like put up with that now. And she was walking in the hallway, and one of these furry kids barked at her, and so she barked back. She probably was mocking him or whatever, you know, but she barked back because they barked at her. She ended up getting suspended for it. And I guess the school just has a policy where they just have to defend those kids. You know, they can't, they can't punish these furries at all.
Here?
Yeah, this was in, and they also have pee pads in the bathroom for these kids.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Is that like a middle school or something?
It might have been the high school. She's like either, I think at this point, it's in the high school.
Okay. Well,
but yeah.
Okay, so local community nearby. Okay, well, I mean, hey, here's the deal. One thing I'll say about that is, if people want to be inclusive, right? But at the end of the day, if you want to be a furry, live your life, man. I mean, there's Diddy freak-offs. There's all these other things. I'm starting to think that furries aren't too far-fetched at this point from what I'm learning. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people think they're animals and stuff. How do you pay bills, dude? Like, at what point is the bank like, I don't care what you are, where's my money? You know what I mean?
So there was one kid that I knew in high school that I found out before graduation was a furry. And it was just like he was moonlighting as a furry, right? So he didn't show it at school. It was just a hobby.
Yeah.
And so I learned a little bit about it. And there's all sorts of different stuff people believe. There are people that believe that they are animals.
Yes.
And that group is called otherkin. Okay. So they...
How do you know this?
Because I'm on the internet a lot, bro.
You were one of them.
I literally...
You've evolved.
I go on Reddit and I go to subreddits for people like this because I think this is the root of the problem is the internet. You can find communities of people that feed into your delusions, right? So you can go on Reddit and you can go into these subreddits where it's just groups of furries that all feed into each other and they're all supportive of it. And so it's an echo chamber, right? And so you can go on there and you can read all these posts from furries and things. And there's all sorts of crazy communities like this and you really get to learn about it. But there's otherkin who believe that they are spirit of a fox or like I'm a spirit of a wolf, right? But then there's furries, and furries are more just like cosplayers. So they will dress up in their fursuit. They spend a couple $1,000s on a fursuit if they're wealthy enough to do that, and they'll go to these conventions. And I think really what it is it's people that are too socially awkward to feel comfortable in their own skin. And they wouldn't go out to a convention, to a room with hundreds of people that they don't know and talk to people because they just have social anxiety. So they put on a fursuit and that allows them to have like a barrier. A lot of times they take on another personality. So they'll be like, I'm Spot, and Spot is super zany, right? And so so it allows them to be more outgoing under the guise of this fursuit because people can't see them. So I think that's where that stems from. And that's more acceptable than those otherkin people who believe that they are actually in spirit an animal. And it gets worse than that because it could even be fictional things.
In the 80s, they just snorted coke. That was their spot. You know what I mean? Like, that's what got them out.
Or you would just have these ideas and then you would either get bullied if you shared these ideas and then you would stop it, or you would just, keep it in and not let the world know. But nowadays, you can go online, you can find communities of people that totally support you. And
That's true.
Then you really have no way of getting out of that mindset. And then you have schools and things that they're basically slaves to the parents. Like if you try to deny accommodating these people, then the parents will get mad. Now you're in the news. That's not what people want.
I saw a South Park episode like this. Eric Cartman. Do you watch South Park?
Yeah, I used to watch it a lot. I haven't watched the recent seasons.
Eric Cartman, he claimed that he was transgender.
Okay.
And that he demanded his own bathroom, and the school had to abide by it.
Yeah.
And he had a waterfall in his bathroom and stuff, and totally just took advantage of the system. It's a pretty good episode, but highly recommend.
But it sounds like that is sort of what's happening. I mean, they do make those accommodations, and I guess it doesn't really hurt people, but it might hurt the kids. I mean, if you make these accommodations throughout their young life, things that maybe aren't necessary, like putting a pee pad in or something like that, then that's not really going to teach them how the world works, And so I think ultimately it is harmful.
That's what I'm saying. You can't. It kind of reminds me of sovereign citizens. Okay, you stop them on the side of the road. They're like, I'm not abiding by anyone except for the sheriff. It's like, well, yes, you are going to abide by what I'm telling you need to do, lawfully. And they're like, no, I'm not. and then it turns into a use of force, and then they're freaking out because apparently they think like being sovereign, they're just above everyone else on the law.
It's almost like once you reach your hand in to grab them, that their reality has been shattered.
So I mean,
they're in this delusion that like you can't do this,
right?
And you do, and then they're like
how do you? That's what I'm saying. So like you buy an apartment, and you're like, oh, that's great, and they're like, oh yeah, rent's due, and they're like, no, I don't. I'm a wolf. I don't pay rent. Like, okay, well, get out. I'm like, no, that's what? You gotta like conform a little bit, right, to what society has you do. Like I said, like I think we're in agreement on the whole boundary thing, right? Like. You can have boundaries. You can have, like, if you, like I said, you want to be a furry, be a furry. But, like, you still need to pay bills. You still need to, like, do things to help you survive. Like, it's one thing if you go out in the woods, leaving people alone, and you just live off the land, or if you can find that somewhere around here, great. Good for you. That's awesome. But it's another if you're, like, trying to live on a property that you purchased and you owe money to live on that property, and then it just doesn't apply to you. It's like that doesn't work that way. Like
you're right about that, but I don't think that a lot of the people that really buy into that even make it as far as to live in their own property.
For sure.
A lot of times they're just living at their parents' place, and it might be an issue where maybe they don't get a job because of that or whatever. But this is a perfect example of why I wish we had a screen here that I could show you this stuff. I'm gonna send you some videos later and you're gonna fucking die, bro. There's videos of like overweight girls, like teenage girls that just believe in this, like the wolf girl type archetype, right, from high school. And they're like frolicking, like they're doing like they're on all fours running, but they kind of like frolic like that. There's so many videos of this of people just doing that, showing off their wolf
like
runs
in the yard and stuff.
Yeah,
or?
in their yard, in their backyard of their parents' house, just going back and forth. There's this one family. It's like a mom and her 3 daughters, and they all do that wolf shit. And it's just like, it's cringe, bro. This is why I know about this stuff, because I've spent entire days just watching videos of fat teenagers frolicking in their backyards.
I mean, look, like I said, I respect everyone, okay? If you want to do that, look, that is the beauty of America, man. You want to frolic in your yard, you do that. Seriously, do it, man. Like, they're good for you. If that's what kicks your rocks, then do it. It makes me wonder where that line is for the way things are run in society compared to conforming to that, right? So, and I think eventually somebody will hit their breaking point on when they finally say no, it's not going to happen. So
yeah, I think like the next generation might balance it out a little bit. Like I feel like every generation is like the opposite of the previous one, and I think that the next generation is going to be a little bit more practical than us, just because we let everything go, and we let everybody just be who they want to be, even to their own detriment, and we just are overly supportive, like toxic supportness of people. But I think the next generation is going to they're just going to want regular jobs. They're not everyone's going to want to be famous or be an actor and things like that. People are going to know the pitfalls of going to be a famous actor or singer. They're not going to want to do those things. They're just going to want to be blue collar people that just make a good living. And we might not be able to see that now in like teenagers if you ever talk to them. But I think that if the trend continues where as they grow up, they'll be the opposite of us, I think that might be the way that it goes.
There'll be that farmer meme where he's like, it ain't much, but it's honest work. You ever seen that meme? Standing with the pitchfork.
Exactly,
he's got
dude.
like the...
I heard that the word retard is making a comeback.
No, it's not. Is it actually? Like as a derogatory or like actual medical term?
No, as like, how we used to say things are retarded?
Yeah.
Like you can't say that now. But,
correct.
But I think with
it's
like
starting
kids,
to make a comeback.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of kids.
Really?
I've heard kids just casually throwing around the N-word, like just white kids.
You know what else I've heard
like
too?
their black friends. Like it's just accepted.
Yeah. The C word, dude. I've been hearing that starting to come around too. And
That's a good one that came up from
I'm
Australia.
like, what? That, dude? So for those that listen, I highly suggest you watch the Louis Capaldi documentary on Netflix. Okay? That man drops the C word like everyone eats chicken. That's like the friend word. That's the word for friend.
Is he Australian?
No, he's Scottish.
Oh, okay.
But the dude just drops it. Like, he'll say, like, yeah, I'm here with from high school playing some music. It just drops it. And I'm like, whoa. I first heard him, like, he has a thick accent. I had to go back. I had to reverse for a second. And I listened to it. He's dropping C words like it's going out of style, bro. So.
Well, I think if you say that confidently enoug,, then people just let it slide. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, you ever hear somebody like swear, or like hear a kid swear?
Yeah.
And it just hits you wrong,
Like,
you know? Because they
like a 5-year-old or something.
Yeah, because they just don't know how to have it roll off the tongue yet. And it's the same thing. Like if like an American person tries to say cunt, they can't throw that into a conversation as smoothly as an Australian
right?
person can.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but if that is making a comeback, then yeah, the next generation, they're gonna get used to it, and they're gonna be saying it all the time.
Yeah. Dude. So. Can't. Okay. All right. Anything else to add on that, or you good? Okay, we'll move on.
So
all right, go ahead.
We have a local story here.
Yeah.
But I think this type of thing's happening in a lot of cities around the country. But there was a 10-year-old boy who was arrested and charged for stealing an SUV and driving it into a crowded park or playground with a lot of kids around. Nobody was killed. I don't even know if anybody was hurt.
Yeah, no.
But pretty shocking that a 10-year-old committed this crime. And it wasn't a situation where he just wanted to go to the store and buy a toy, and so he didn't know what he was doing, and he grabbed his parents' keys and drove away. You hear stories like that sometimes, but this was actually something where this kid is a suspect in over a dozen cases, and in the last, I think recently, he's been charged 3 times with similar like car theft sort of
robbery,
charges.
burglary, and assault with dangerous weapon.
Right. Then he's 10, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a perfect highlight of how right now the average age of people that are committing these crimes is just getting like lower and lower. All over the United States, we hear about the Kia boys that are stealing cars. I just recently saw a video of a news reporting on some stolen vehicles, and there was a video of a cop that was talking to the reporter, and they were processing a red vehicle that was stolen and dumped in, it seems like decent condition off on the side of the road. It looked like it was over in Dinkytown. I think I recognized the building. But they were looking at the interior of the car, and then as he was talking about this stolen car epidemic, 2 stolen cars go right by, and the reporter's like, "Are those kids?" And he's like, "Yep, those are stolen vehicles." He's like, "But we can't pursue because it's too dangerous to do so right now, and I've seen interviews. Tommy G, the YouTube channel?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it's a guy, he goes into all sorts of like just ghetto-ass areas and like poor areas with lots of crime, and he sort of interviews and embeds himself with these people. And so he was taking rides around with the Kia boys and stuff and interviewing them and asking them, do you feel like, are you scared to get caught? Like, how do you feel when you outrun police? And they basically say that they're not really scared to get caught because they know that all they got to do is speed up and drive really crazy if cops start chasing them, because then the cops have a policy where they have to disengage and just let them go. And so they never get caught. And so they know that there's really no risk of doing this. And in Minneapolis, it really seems like if you get caught, you're really not seeing any charges come from the attorney's office. Mm-hmm. And the police chiefs in like Hennepin County have been really outspoken lately against the, would it be the district attorney? Hennepin County.
Okay. Mary Moriarty. Yep.
Right. They're very outspoken against her, basically saying there was a case of 2 stolen vehicles where the teenagers were shooting at each other. And they said, we just reported these people 3 days ago for charges, and our response was never answered. The parents have been asking us to get their kids off the streets so they don't get killed, and our pleas were not answered by the attorney's office, and 3 days later they get shot at. Luckily no one was killed, but nothing is being done about this. It's a huge epidemic.
It's a very huge epidemic. Yeah, so I'll say, so I'll start out with this. I pulled over a 12-year-old one time.
Wow.
Yep. So it was it was late at night. I was working nights, and this car was going like 10 over, like 40 and a 30, and it was almost 3 in the morning. No one else was out, and I'm like, all right, I'll stop it. Going 10 over. It's 3 in the morning, whatever. Flip around on it. Turn on my lights, and it like just slow rolls for like 2 blocks.
Okay.
Finally, it comes to a stop. I get out of the car, and I already had people rolling towards me because when a car is slow to stop is what we call it. That usually is something weird, right? Like, why aren't you stopping? So I get out, and I walk up to the driver, and I'm looking at this kid, and I'm like, I knew for sure he was under 18 for sure. Super baby face. And I'm like, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 15. I'm like, okay. I said, do you have a permit at minimum? I mean, he's got all his juvenile friends in the car with him. Now, don't freak out, people. When I say juvenile, I'm referring to under 18, not like criminal people. Okay? Juveniles are considered... They're called juveniles under 18. Some people might think, well, you're calling them juvenile because they're, like delinquent or something.
Yeah, the term juvenile delinquent.
Yeah, sure. So that's what I mean when I say juvenile. Anyway, and I'm like, you're 15, and he said, yeah. So I'm like, well, what's your name? Gave me a name, date of birth that equaled 15.
Did he have to count on his fingers?
Kinda. He kind of stumbled on it, and I'm like, that's weird, So I go back, I find out he gave me his older brother's name. So I go back to the car and I'm like, hey man, you're not him. Who are you? Like, what's your real name? Gives me his real name. He was 12 years old. I'm like, dude, you're 12 years old. I'm like, whose car is this? He's like, it's my friend's car. And it was a girl that was sitting in the back seat. It was her parents' car. Bro, if my future kid allowed one of his friends to drive my vehicle, dude, it would be a nuclear war. Like, it would be... Well, the point to this story is this kid, come to find out, has had several issues before, okay? Now, some of that might be on the parents for not caring, and this kind of what you were alluding to, some parents do care. Some parents want them locked up because at least when they're locked up, they can't cause crime or get in the way of others, right? So then I'll allude to a second story, and then we can get into the more of the topic. So I was sitting on the highway one night, and it was around that time. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had my radar on, and I'm sitting there listening to music, and all of a sudden, 115 comes on the radar. It's 65 miles per hour along there. And at first I thought my radar was just something was up with it or whatever. So I shut it off for a second. I turned it back on, and it was still at a solid like 112. So I, of course, right, car passes me. I flip around on it, and I'm going, and the car's not slowing down. So I call pursuit. We find it, a city to the north of us. 4 teenagers get out on foot, and we find all 4 of them. But the first question they asked us, the driver, the first question he asked us was, why did you continue to chase us? His thought process was, if I go long enough, they'll cancel. And our response was, well, we're not Minneapolis or St. Paul.
Yeah.
And we're going to catch you. So, and we did. And so, there is that thought process of, well, if I'm dangerous enough, or if I just keep going, they will stop, at some point. And it's unfortunate because that thought process, from what society expects, has really changed. Back in the 90s and even early 2000s, society would look at the criminal if a crash happened, like a fatal or something, and say, that's on the criminal. Now it's totally flipped to where it's the cop's problem, right? You shouldn't have chased him. If you didn't continue to chase him, he wouldn't have crashed and killed somebody. So,
is there anything that they cite? Like, the people that make these policies that just, it seemingly makes it easier for them to get away, and they're already driving 115 miles an hour, right? And I know you agree with me, so I guess I don't have to argue that point. But like, if you are more likely to have participated in these discussions than I have, is there any merit to the other viewpoint on things? Like, do they make any good points about how these policies have been proven since, I guess, like the George Floyd days is probably when this stuff really started to be implemented. Over that period of a few years, do they have any evidence to say that this actually has been making things safer?
Honestly, to be honest, I don't know. I can't say yes or no one way or another. I haven't looked deep into like the concrete issues or numbers on that, I guess you could say. If I were to think about it, I mean, the problem is that even if up front it was safer, who is to stop that person from doing it that night again, right? So like if a cop stops the car or tries to stop the car, runs off, right? Gets away. 3 hours later, they're doing the same thing, runs off, gets away. Well, the second cop may not have known that the first cop tried to stop this car. So the second time that they attempt a pursuit before they cancel it, they end up killing somebody. Okay? So what's the difference if they're going to continue the behavior and there's no change or there's no consequences from it in the first place? So it may take them 47 times to start a pursuit and then hurt somebody, but that 47th time could have stopped at 1 or 2. Instead, it's just letting them go until eventually something will happen. Something bad will happen, right? It's like using duct tape to seal a boat, right? The first couple times you go out in the water, you might be able to make it happen, especially with Flex Tape. We're not sponsored, but awesome, right? You might be able to make it happen. But after a while, that tape is going to start to deteriorate, and an accident is going to happen. It's going to happen. So if you keep just like putting a Band-Aid, I mean, you heard it yourself. Like a lot of the Kia boys were like, no, we're not afraid to get caught. Like, why would we be? We're going to be out the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter, So
there was a quote where the police chief said that prison is not an acceptable option for a 10-year-old, but the adults who can stop this behavior need to act in order to stop this moving forward. And my only thought there is, well, that's you. Like, you
Correct.
are the adult that can make a difference here. And I feel like he was alluding to
You're saying the
parents.
chief or the...
Well, I believe, I wrote down here that the police chief said that.
I mean, like, are you saying you as in that's the chief's
the police
responsibility?
as a
or like,
whole, yeah.
Okay.
And I guess, I mean, I don't know exactly who sets his limitations, but I'm assuming that, I don't know where the failure happens in the process, right? It seems like maybe it is the people that aren't prosecuting these charges. It ends up being a catch and release thing. But I'm saying, yeah, the police are the adults that, can make the decision to throw in jail, or maybe it is the prosecuting office, the attorney's office, right? Whoever's not doing that, right? Those are the adults that can make a difference moving forward. I feel like he was alluding to the parents in the kid's life need to act in order to stop this moving forward. But I just feel like the parents of these kids have got to just be helpless. I mean, they just got to be wishing that their kid would be in prison, so that way they at least know they're safe.
Well, there's got to be, and look, I mean, this is old school too, but there's got to be like a boot camp out there, right? To make your kids, like, to break them in, like to be like, you have it nice here, man. You want to go, you have to make your bed twice a day. You got to, if you don't, like, you're going to do hard labor, like chores. There's got to be some out there like that, right? To force your kid to go to. Like, I don't know.
So they also said that the system doesn't have answers for offenders this young.
Correct.
But in 2019, they shut down the 2 facilities that housed kids of this age that were doing these types of things. that were in operation for the past 100 years, and they said that they replaced them with more data-driven solutions that are like in-house programs, things like that. And here we are in 2023, 4 years after that. I mean, we have the highest rate. It was a record rate in 2023 of these types of crimes happening, and over half of them are being done by young people, juveniles. And so it seems like it isn't really helping. I mean, they did have those solutions in the system. The reason we don't have them now is because in 2019 they shut them down.
So that is directly correlated. How many times you hear, man, there's so much mental health issues out there now. Like, it seems such more prevalent that people are having crisis and stuff like that. Yeah, that's because they closed down a bunch of the asylums, whatever you want to call them, and people don't have places to stay at anymore. It's the same concept, just with kids, And unfortunately, like, these kids, whether it's maybe they probably do have some screws loose in the head, but like, they are going to ruin their life. Have you seen Beyond Scared Straight? That show where they yell in their face and stuff?
Yeah.
Dude, these prisoners are like, you're going to ruin your life. Like, I listened to, what's it called? There's a podcast that's really good. It's based in San Quentin Prison in California, and it's prisoners that talk.
Really?
It's the first ever podcast from a prison. Now, granted, right, it has to go through like 6 channels before it can get released to Apple Podcasts to make sure they're not like doing anything weird. But they interviewed a guy there. San Quentin is like max level prison. Like, people have murdered several people that are there, right? So they interviewed a guy, and he was part of the Crips out in California. And he said that he straight up murdered a guy in the gas station because he was in the wrong gas station. Like, straight up, like, he was a block over where he should have been territory-wise, and just shot and killed him. And the guy's like, how selfish of me to quickly make a decision to end a person's life. And he kind of alluded to back, because he was so young, he's like, these kids have no idea the quick decisions that they're making are going to make their consequences last forever. And he said it's such a shame to see these kids just not care. I mean, how dangerous is it that these kids don't care about life? They don't care about anything else. You don't care about taking somebody's life. You don't care about anything else that comes before that. And that's what's scary, Yeah,
absolutely. And you said, you don't know if they have screws loose, whether they do have actual mental illnesses causing this, or they just are fucking out of control. The people are against these facilities for these people because they can be rough environments, right? It can be seen as like cruel, right? So it's just like how prison's rough, right? But the fact is that if you are a mom, especially if you're a single mom and you're trying to hold down a household, you don't have a lot of money coming in, probably working a lot of hours for not much, you do not have the knowledge or like the training or the time or the resources to control your kid. Like, a parent should have the right to look at, law enforcement and say, like, listen, like, I'm worried. I don't know where my kid is at. I would rather him be in a facility where I know that he's safe. I know that there's programs and it's regimented to give him a chance. Are you talking about like
juvenile detention or
like that? Or I don't know what they had going on at these facilities that they shut down. But like, it's better to have a facility for these kids, so that way at least the parents know that they're safe. They know that it's off their plate, because a parent is doomed to fail. I mean, sometimes, man, like, there's nothing you can do as a parent if your kid is just fucking out of control.
Yeah.
Like
if
no matter how good of a parent or how understanding you are, or even how strict you are, like, parenting can only go so far, especially if you're just doing it alone. And so they're asking for this help, but they're just not receiving it. And I feel like a lot of these rules are coming out to catch and release and not inflict punishment on these kids as a way, it's framed as a way to help the kids and not, change their lives forever by condemning them. But ultimately, I think the ones that want to get them under control and want to get them off the streets, even if it does mean punishing them, that really is what's going to help them. And it just seems like the ones that are advocating for not enacting these punishments, they don't really care about the kids. They just care about the public image. In the same way we're talking about with schools that are like overly accommodating to the detriment of a kid, it's not so much about, helping the children. It's more about not being called out publicly. You want to be seen as the one making the right decision, even if the data isn't there to support that.
Well, and you have to remember, too, because I know we talked about this before, but elected officials, man, like Mary Moriarty is elected, to be the county attorney. So, I mean, I hate to say it, people, but, you voted for that. You know what I mean? And to be honest with you, lately I've been seeing in the news a lot more people, even citizens, are getting more and more outspoken on lesser penalties. There was one where a woman helped a dude murder their son, and instead of aid and abet for murder, she pled down to kidnapping of 20 years for their son's murder. And they're like, she was just as a part of his murder as anybody else. She should get life or more than 20 years. And the family was livid. This just happened last month. And the family was livid. So it's stuff like that,
I just saw a video today, and I believe this is a local story as well. You might be able to confirm, but it was a story. I don't know where in the city it happened, but in the footage they mentioned Minneapolis. There was this brother and sister that were racing their cars, and they were going I think 110 miles an hour or something like that. And then some lady ends up getting hit by the brother, who's I think under 18 at the time, was 17 at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a couple, 22-year-old couple ended up dying from that. And the one that the little brother that was driving the car that hit the couple ended up getting sentenced, but since he was a juvenile, it was much later. He got house arrest until he turned 21.
I do remember that, yeah.
Then he got released, and he's scot-free now. And then the sister who was raising him, I think that she didn't get charged for murder at all or manslaughter. I think she pretty much got off light as well.
Yep.
And so, that's another example. And it's just baffling because I don't know anybody that would advocate for that. If it came down to a jury, I just can't believe that that's the result that it would have. And maybe a jury's not, responsible for sentencing, right? So it come down to the judge. But going back to how people voted for that, I just don't know how many people vote with knowledge on
Correct.
who they want the district attorney to be.
Correct.
If that's on a ballot, if I'm voting for state senator or something, if that's on the same ballot, I don't know when that's even voted for, but I could ask 100 people, what do you think of this candidate for district attorney? And I don't think anybody would know what to say to that question.
Well, I mean, look, it's kind of like the politic thing, Kay. People are going to say certain things that people want to hear, and that's all they need to do. They're not going to look into. But, okay, so let's expand that. If you look in the state, almost every single county attorney that's in these counties, per county, right? Every attorney per county. I would be willing to bet that they have a minimum 95% win rate in court, right? So win counts as a plea bargain. Doesn't matter. You could be, yes, that's great. You have a huge win percentage, but let's really look down and dirty. How many of those did you go to trial for and win, outright? You fought for the highest charge or the charge that they should have got and won, instead of taking a plea and then using that as a check mark as, yep, we got him convicted. Because you'll see that 99% of people that cross my desk are convicted. I'm sure they are. But what does that mean, So people really need to take a look into like, what do the numbers mean? Like, what does that mean? Really take a look at the track history of that, So
Think of how many people don't put any more effort into who they're voting for besides whether they're Democrat or Republican.
Yep.
I mean, so many people vote for that monumental election just based on that surface level information. I don't even know anything about the candidates for governor or Senate or any of that. I don't know any of those minor elections. I've never, to my knowledge, voted for anything like that. And so I don't know. Like I don't even know what these people are winning based on. I think that the average person wouldn't even know the win percentage unless it was written in a parentheses next to their name on the ballot. Like that's
right.
I think they don't even have a party they belong to. So I just don't even know what people are voting based on. It'd be interesting to know. I mean, if you asked 100 people that voted for her, why did you vote for her? And then how do you think she's doing? I think people wouldn't even know what to say to that.
No. And you also have to understand a lot of this is the decisions post-Floyd, right? Like that's what it is. I mean, I remember, after a bunch of Minneapolis cops dropped out after that happened, the problem became that at first they're like defund the police, right? So essentially that's like saying take all 4 tires off your car. And it's like, well, I mean, I need that like to get around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the problem became like, I think in their mind, because I'm thinking objectively here, I think in their mind, they were trying to do something different, a different way of, maybe a different type of policing that they tried pushing out, and that's what they mean by defund the police. The problem is that currently they literally cannot hire anybody. And unfortunately, the city council that initially wanted the police department banned, like disbanded, is now clamoring for people because the crime is skyrocketing. And they cannot get people to work there. Like, you can make over $250K a year working there, and nobody will do it. So
yeah, well, it's got to come from the fact that they know that they're not being backed up by the city. But I mean, nobody can deny that the crime is a problem. And I mean, I appreciate why they went in that direction, just because that they were trying to answer the cries of the people.
For sure.
But now, if the people are saying, well, there's
people are getting
issues
murdered
now,
yeah,
how hard is it for them to say, okay, well, we see that things have not gone well. The crime is at an all-time high as of last year. It dropped. It seems like this year is going to be better than last year, but it's only an improvement from the all-time worst stats, right? So there might be people trying to frame that as an improvement, like, oh, look how good they're doing. But really, over a long course of time, it's not. But, I mean, how hard is it to say, like, we were wrong about that? Let's just go back to the laws that we had when things were better. And I bet that people would fill those positions. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer. And so, and I guess my question just for this type of thing always is, I can't imagine who is advocating for the stuff that so obviously is bad. Like, I just don't know who can honestly do that.
Again, I think a lot of it stems from people that are not affected by it. Like, truly. Like, do you remember hear about John Thompson?
No.
The one of the city, I can't remember if he was part of the council. He was part of Minneapolis somehow.
Okay.
Well, part of their policy, if you're going to be on the council or, like I said, representative or something, you have to live in your district that you are part of, right? So the problem is they found out he doesn't live in his district and he lives like in Wisconsin or something like that. And so I think sometimes these votings of these laws or of these new like policies are not affecting the people that are making those decisions. Like, you go live on this street. And you tell me, like, where do you live? Because these people keep their doors unlocked at night so their cars don't get smashed in.
Yeah.
Do you do that at night? No, because you have a gated property that is probably protected by someone or some alarm system. These people can't afford that, you know? But then you say, well, you know, we need to go lighter on the criminals or whatever excuse they want to come up with. It's like, yeah, because are you catching stray bullets in your house? No. Like these people, these kids that are getting hit on trampolines, paralyzed, killed. How many kids you hear that were 6+ years old or even younger that just get shot by a stray bullet, dude? What? Like, what kind of life is that? Like, where are we living? We're not, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just, I get too caught up in it because it's just, sometimes it's like, are you going to change until you catch a stray bullet? Because then I feel like things are going to change, right?
Of course.
Because that happened to a senator. I can't remember if it was Klobuchar. It happened to one of our senators, and they were out in D.C. and they got like destroyed. They got like robbed or something. And next thing you know, things got to change, man. Things got to change. It's like, you know, I don't know. All right, so the final story we want to cover today is a Matthew Perry story. For those that don't know, Matthew Perry was well known as Chandler in the TV series Friends that went on for quite a few years back in the early 2000s. Matthew Perry struggled with opioid addiction and alcohol, but for most of his life it was opiates, like heroin or any other type of what I call sleep drugs, basically that make you nod off to sleep or just slow your brain down. Matthew Perry died last year in his hot tub. He was high on fentanyl, or was it
Ketamine.
Ketamine. He was high on ketamine, and essentially they're like, okay, well, we need to look and see how did he get this ketamine. And eventually, recently, at least one doctor came out as part of a plea deal to kind of discuss how he got the ketamine, how Matthew Perry got the ketamine, I should say, from him. And some of the conversations that went on between him, it's Dr. Chavez, and I'm going to call him Dr. P because it's like Plusentia or something like that, Plusentia. So Dr. Chavez and Dr. P were essentially kind of back and forth with Matthew on getting him this ketamine. And so what are your thoughts on it?
Well, he had a whole ketamine pipeline in place in his life. I mean, he had a live-in assistant whose whole job was just to administer ketamine into his system on demand. And that seems pretty far-fetched. But I was just trying to think about, like, you know, the appeal of that. And that might be more common than we think. Like, people, they will hire, like, if you ask anybody, like, what would you do if you were rich? Well, they would hire, like, a live-in personal chef, you know, because cooking is a hassle.
Sounds amazing to me.
Exactly. Everyone would agree that that's a good time saver. Cooking is nowhere near as much of a hassle as having to deal with a drug dealer. Okay? Like Matthew Perry, if you're rich, you don't want to have to be sitting in a McDonald's parking lot all afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Waiting for a drug dealer who's been 15 minutes away for the last 3 hours. Okay? He just wants him there in his house, and he just said, hey, look, like, I'll pay you really good money. You just got to give me this drug whenever I ask for it, and you can have the whole house to yourself. You're not even going to know I'm here because I'm going to be in a K-hole. So, you know, I'll be over here in my hot tub, and then you can do whatever you want, you know. Seems like a sweet deal for that doctor. But now he's lost his medical license, and like you said, there was conversation between these people that were administering these drugs, basically saying, like, you know, let's see how much this moron will pay, which is harsh.
That's very harsh, yeah.
But who's not talked like that about their boss?
Well, not only that, but, like, think about it this way, you know, if Matthew... I'll back up just a little bit. So what makes this even more sad is Matthew, I would say about 3 to 4 months before he died, did like a 60 Minutes interview about his addiction, how he conquered it. In fact, he wrote a book right before he died. And very sad. And, what I don't get is these doctors, that's the true meaning of greed, right? Like, this person is abusing it. And because remember, so part of the article said that he was using it to quit smoking. But the doctor said he knew that ketamine is not a good substitute to wean you off
Have you
smoking.
tried vaping?
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Ketamine.
So, yeah. So, but there's stuff like that where it's like, that stuff is super addictive, and he had some demons to fight with, and he couldn't get over it. And unfortunately, he found Dr. Feelgood, as Motley Crue calls it.
Well, her name that she called herself, this Placencia lady, is the Ketamine Queen. Like, she had a whole name. Like,
yeah.
They're gonna and by the way, is that not a name of a documentary that we're gonna see on Netflix in 6 months?
For sure.
We're gonna see it.
For sure. And I think Dr. Chavez's office was like Dreamscape Ketamine or something like that.
Really?
Like something that just sounded like fantasy, and I guess all in all, what sucks is I feel like these doctors are being selfish because they're saying all this under a plea deal. Like, they're doing this for them. They're not like they'll squeal because they don't want to face murder charges or some other life in prison, whatever they're getting. I don't know the exact terms of the plea deal, but
I know that this Chavez guy, I think he's going to get 10 years, and he had to surrender his medical license right away.
Yeah. So did you hear about Dr. P? I don't know
what's happening with her. Okay. Ketamine Queen. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So, it is greed because, they knew the guy had a problem.
Absolutely.
It would have been easy to see that because by the third time you're having to inject him with ketamine, I'm assuming that's how they do it.
I'm guessing.
Inject it.
Yeah.
In the day, then, the guy's just, he's gone too deep, right? But if he had an office like that, my guess would be that he's one of these doctors that administers ketamine for treatment for like depression, because that's in certain states becoming more common. People that antidepressants just weren't working on, some of them go to these ketamine therapy places and they claim that works. They just get strapped to a chair, they take this ketamine, and I think it's not that long of like a hallucination, right? But it helps them over time. So I wonder where the line is drawn, between someone that comes in every week to get their ketamine done in the office versus someone that, does it in their house. Like, when does it become too greedy? Like, what are your thoughts on this level of drug being used as like a medical treatment?
I don't have a doctorate in medical, so I don't know if doctors are saying that there is an actual like good use to it. Great. I know Botox works for migraines.
Really?
Oh yeah. People get Botox. I had a psychology professor. It was kind of strange. So like it's kind of weird, but he would get Botox shots from the edge of his eyebrows here all the way up like this to the back of his head. Constant shots. And he said he used to get like 18 migraines a month.
Wow.
And with Botox, it was about 2 per month. I don't know. He explained like what Botox did, but you think about that and you're like, wasn't Botox like for your lips and your cheeks and like other things?
Yeah.
Well, they found another thing that actually works for it. So
you must have the most beautiful forehead.
Dude, it looks like one of those shit rings you sit on when you break your tailbone.
What's that? I don't know that.
It looks like a sponge ring that you sit on,
like on
when
a
you
toilet?
break your tailbone. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like you have to sit on a cushion or something.
Oh, I didn't.
Because his head is like it's lifted up in this place.
Oh, so just like the ring around the head.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So those migraines must have been bad to deal with that.
Not like to the point where it's like, wow, man, like you look like a superhero who has like can like telepathy or something, But it was enough to be like noticeable,
Yeah.
So anyway, I would imagine that ketamine probably does have great qualities to it that can help others. But they knew damn well what they were doing with Matthew Perry. He's just another celebrity that unfortunately found their doctor that would help them out. I mean, this happens all the time. I shouldn't say all
Even
the time,
with
but
regular people, though. I mean,
yeah.
it's like, I mean, this is obviously nowhere near as severe, but I remember back before weed was like legally accepted basically everywhere, or not everywhere, but in like half the states now, and then pretty much everybody would like to see weed be legal, right? Like that's kind of the modern take on it.
Yep.
Well, when I went to California, must have been in like 2012 or something like that. It might have been it was medically legal at that time, but you had to have like a card to go and buy it at a dispensary. Well, I went to Venice Beach and I was walking down and there was tents set up everywhere where they said like, get your medical card here. And it was doctors would be in these tents and you could go in and sit down and just be like, yeah, like I have a headache or whatever.
Right.
And they'd be like, oh, here's your prescription for weed. And everybody knew what was going on. They were legitimate doctors, but they totally were just doing a business, which technically was like legally immoral, I would say, right?
Yeah.
People didn't have any issue with it, especially in California, but it was sort of a loophole in the law. I mean, those texts are pretty damning, I would say, when they say, like, how much will this idiot pay or whatever. Yeah. But I would like to know the progression from his perspective, if he had an actual office where he was administering this ketamine. I mean, was he doing it all above board, or are a lot of these places just legal ways for ketamine addicts basically to go and get blitzed in a controlled environment?
Well, I think it did mention at one point that he had to lie about like third-party deliveries or something like that, like how he was getting rid of this ketamine so quickly. Or
I see.
So it sounded like he had trouble coming up with excuses on like why he was losing ketamine so quickly.
Okay.
Not just like normal appointments.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess you're right.
It's like a drug addict like brings their bottle for 30 days and it's gone like in 3 days, and they're like, oh, I dumped it down the drain or my dog ate it or something. It's like, okay, well, So.
It's got to be so hard to kick that habit if you have the resources to just indulge.
Yeah.
Like some people, like me included, like I just feel like I'm an indulgent type person. Like if I had unlimited resources, like who knows what I'd be like, I'd be eating myself to death. I'd just be like indulging in everything. I'd die early, And like, how are you supposed to kick that? Like when you have no responsibilities, I don't know if he has kids or not, but if you don't have kids, you're not responsible to anybody. Like there's not a lot of incentive to not just be on ketamine in your hot tub all day. Like I bet it was a great time. I bet he felt amazing, doing it.
He probably didn't even know he died.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight up, he just fell asleep and that's it,
Yeah.
So
I have sympathy for him, but I don't think anything could have stopped it. If these guys wouldn't have been giving it to him, somebody else would, or he would have been meeting drug dealers on the streets. Like, there's nothing that could have stopped it.
Without a doubt. And that's part of the problem with addiction, right, is, like, you have to want to change. Like, you as the person have to want to change your habits. It's been, I mean, look at Avocado, whatever the hell his name is. He didn't, like, he could have keep doing the mukbangs or whatever the hell they're called. And he actually turned it around. He lost like 200-something pounds and looks great now, Like, you got to want the change. You got to make the change. Some people it's a scare. Some people actually get in trouble and then make changes after. But at some point, if you don't want it, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen.
There's a couple of channels that'll interview homeless people on the streets. Mm-hmm. And that's what they all say. A lot of them are very honest about that. Like when asked, what do we got to do to get these people off the streets and stuff, they just say there's literally nothing you can do. Like, I like being homeless, One day I'll get clean, but like whenever I want to, I'll do it. But they're happy just where they're at. There's got to be a certain comfort to sitting at rock bottom for a while because like there's nothing to lose. There's got to be a certain comforting feeling at that point. But whether you're rich or completely broke, I mean, I guess that's just the mentality you're stuck in. And it's the same thing. I mean, you have to want it. And it's got to be harder to want it if you're addicted, but it hasn't ruined your life, really. I mean, you have all this stuff.
Because then you can make the argument of, because addiction is all, I think the definition, right, of addiction is it ruins your daily activities. Like, it gets in the way of your daily function. And like, man, I mean, if you're still bringing in money, you still can afford your place. Like, why do you care? Like, everything's the same.
Yeah, you're gonna have to look more inward to find justification.
Right.
I've also watched like YouTube channels where people are like ex-alcoholics, and they would just talk about like their daily routine of how they would wake up, dry heave, and then they would have a shot in the shower, and then on their way to work they'd be drinking the whole way. And but a lot of these guys were making good money. They're running a business, or one guy, he was addicted to like alcohol and cocaine, right? But he was like making an assload of money as like a car salesman or something. And so it's like in his mind, I bet it was easy to justify, oh, well, the coke helps me to sell better, I'm making tons of money. But it probably took the destruction of his relationships and things in order for him to finally stop, right? You got to look beyond the material things. But if he doesn't have, and I don't know if this is the case, but if he doesn't have a marriage and he doesn't have kids, then really there's nobody else to hurt. He's just literally just rotting away in a K-hole in his mansion all day.
Right.
And there's no one there to like to stop him. But I think he even had problems as far back as like filming Friends. He was drunk. So
yeah. So in his book and his interview that he had, he actually discussed that. So in fact, he alluded to how you could tell. So he said in the seasons where he was heavier set, he was drinking, and in the seasons where he was much skinnier was his opioid use. Wow. So, and you can honestly, like, you can go back and it's a stark difference. Like, you can tell when he's bigger, and then when, like, 2 seasons later, the dude's a stick. So, it's interesting to see. But what I will say, and the other stars would say this too, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, they would say that they knew he was high or drunk on the set, but when it came time to film, he was dead on.
He's got it done.
Dead on. And that's what you're saying, like the car salesman. Like, he'd be like, well, but this is the best way I can do my job. Like, I mean, if I don't know. I mean, if you can get it done, I guess. But,
My best friend is an alcoholic, and you just wouldn't ever know. Like, you literally wouldn't know.
Right.
And it was like, for years, if he was driving, he was drunk driving because he was drunk all the time.
Right.
But, like, you literally would never know. And, like, he was running his own business and things, and so like things were going fine, and he was able to talk to people just fine. Like, he wasn't stumbling around or anything like that. But you just be like hanging out with him, and then he's like, "Man, I'm drunk right now." You're like, "Really?" Like, I literally had no idea.
Like, it's like 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, but like me, like I can't even imagine
No.
showing up to a work shift drunk. Like, people would immediately find out. But some people, they're just high functioning. They can just like
Super high.
take care of things and like just get it done. I don't know. It's very interesting. But yeah, anything else to say about that?
No, just feel bad for him. Rip.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad when someone's like that successful, especially when they play such like a cheery character.
Yeah.
And then to find out that that's not really how it is.
Look at Robin Williams, dude. Killed himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was a comedian. He was like, played a great Mrs. Doubtfire, like a bunch of different characters, and there he goes, killed himself.
Do you know what Matthew Perry's like demons were? Like what was
why
his
he
deal?
used drugs? I think he was abused when he was a kid.
Okay.
And it never got like figured out, or he never like got it figured out.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Dang.
But anyway.
All right. Well, well, thanks for watching. Been releasing the episodes on Thursdays, so every Thursday a new episode comes out, and shorts every day on YouTube and TikTok. Subscribe if you made it this far. Thanks for watching.